Let's talk about assessing children and families. Working with families and youth is a core of good family-centered practice. And to conduct assessment, service planning, and case management successfully, case managers must be skilled in communicating with children, with youth, and families to help them strengthen interpersonal, parenting, and problem-solving skills. Elements of effective work with families include engaging the families and the youth, providing direct assistance with challenges the family is facing. It may include referrals for counseling, parent coaching. Case managers might model, and case managers will continue to assess with the family their strengths, needs, and progress throughout the case manager, family, and child case management relationship. Case management services are designed to identify the needs of the child and the family, as well as identify and connect to resources to meet those needs. Elements of effective case management work with families can include engaging the families and the youth, providing direct assistance and referrals with challenges the family is facing, including counseling, parent coaching, and modeling, and continued assessment with the family, assessing their strengths, their needs, and their progress. The case manager will provide resources for the family. They may attend IEP meetings and advocate for the child. They'll provide support and guidance through different transitions. They'll support medical needs and connect and apply for services for the family and submit referrals for the child as the child ages through different service delivery systems. The case manager builds a team that includes the family, the child, the parents, the caregivers, and other professionals in the child and the family's life. Case management services are designed to identify the needs of the child and the family, as well as identify and connect the child and family to resources to meet those needs. Services are delivered in a variety of ways by the case manager. The case manager will have a visit at least once a month with the family and the child. More often than not, it's more frequent because of the systems the family is having trouble negotiating and mastering in getting services for their child. The case manager will negotiate the service plan initially and then every 90 days with the family and connect the child and the family to funding and other resources. They'll provide support at school and advocate if the child's problems involve the school system or their education. The case manager will provide support through life transitions and provide support with medical needs and equipment services as needed. The case manager has knowledge of community resources and will research options to meet funding needs. And the case manager will submit referrals for services and monitor those services. That can include attending school staffings or IEP meetings to advocate for the child and the family. They'll attend any kind of community meetings the family might be involved in, and they may observe the child in the classroom as part of the assessment process. The case manager will help the family advocate for their own child and develop that skill building. They'll provide resources for helping meet the child's needs in the school. And then in transitions include schools, grades, from grade to grade, milestones, and new schools. So a case manager could assist with planning and preparing the child and family for any of those upcoming transitions. And if the child is at an age where they're going to turn into an adult, the case manager can transition that milestone and support the family to understand how to receive services in the adult system. The case manager can complete referral packets, advise the family and the new adult on what to expect and where to receive services, and explore all the services that might be available under adult services for the individual. Some case managers will apply for adult programs prior to the transfer to an adult case manager. Medical needs may also be supported by the case manager, who can connect the child and the family to providers for medical equipment, Medicaid services. The case manager can assist in understanding how insurances work and insurance coverage for the family and the child. And the case manager could explore grants, foundations, and other funding options for items and services that are not covered by insurance or Medicaid. Prior authorization for case management services is required. Medicaid HMOs are typically the stakeholders who provide this authorization, and an agency's utilization management department works with the case manager to provide the stakeholder the eligibility criteria. Medicaid HMOs authorize case management services based on need. The Medicaid HMOs want to see that the case manager is doing something to help the family and the child to attain independence and to attain services that are needed. They also want to see that the case manager is working with the family to teach the family to be independent. A service plan is created initially, and then again every 90 days unless there's been a significant change. And it's imperative that the guardian's signature is on that treatment service plan, as well as the case management supervisor's signature. Services can be approved and continued over time, with the utilization manager requesting more units of service for case management. However, at times Medicaid HMOs will encourage closure of the service, or they'll deny the service. If this happens, the case manager should notify the family. And if the service is closed, it doesn't mean that the child is no longer eligible for case management. It means that the service plan is not very active and doesn't demonstrate a need for case management. As new needs arise in the future for the child and the family can contact their case manager and have the case reopened. There are two basic requirements for kids case management, and that is the child must have a behavioral health diagnosis, and the family must demonstrate a need for case management services, being unable to arrange for services independently. Behavioral health services for children include, of course, children's targeted case management. Other services the children's targeted case management worker might refer to include outpatient therapy, outpatient psychiatry, in-home services, community services, statewide inpatient programs, and of course crisis stabilization. Let's talk about these a little bit more in depth. So outpatient services treatments include counseling and therapeutic services geared to address symptoms, relieve excess stress, and promote positive orientation and growth. These services can include comprehensive assessment, diagnosis, individual and family and group therapy. These therapies focus on the development and emotional needs of problems. Eligibility is based on having a diagnosis of serious emotional disturbance, and evidence in treatment is necessary to show that the mental health condition, the prior treatment, and clinical justification is all being addressed, and that the client is participating in treatment and it's exhibiting progress towards goals. Outpatient community-based services have goals to improve in the areas of daily living skills, community inclusion, interpersonal skills, support, community inclusion that allows the child to remain in their natural environment. These treatments include individual or family therapy, counseling, and they're designed to assist in understanding behavior, improve communication, especially family communications, facilitate collaboration between the child, the family, and the different systems the family is involved in, including schools and legal systems, and to develop a plan to improve their functioning in the home and the community. Services can include therapy, problem-solving activities, opportunities to learn social skills, building relationships, and learning to improve self-awareness in their environment and social appropriateness. Of course, eligibility is that the child must have a mental health diagnosis with significant functional impairment and have a serious emotional disturbance for 1 year or likely to last more than 1 year. This treatment is not intensive. More intensive treatment is the crisis stabilization set of services where a child might stay on a crisis unit for a few days. And then even more intensive are statewide inpatient programs, which are residential treatment services for children who require 24-hour supervision. And the goal of statewide inpatient services is to have the placement as close to the child's home as possible, with families remaining as actively involved in their child's care and treatment as possible. Statewide inpatient services treat both mental illness and help the child return to his or her family and community as soon as possible. The case manager must stay in touch with the statewide inpatient program at least once every 30 days and maintain contact with the local family to help with the transition and with the communication as well. The purpose for preparing for activities is to ensure that the case manager is as informed as possible about family dynamics, typical goals families are looking to achieve, and individual goals families might have for their child. Adequate preparation will inform the case manager about the family's progress or challenges with current and past interventions, and having an adequate understanding of any family's involvement with and response to past or current treatment efforts will be needed to identify what might already be known, what gaps exist, and what more needs to be learned about the family. The case manager's role in preparing a family for case management services is also managing a safety plan, including the responsibilities for contacts with safety service providers. Understand what is expected. What is the household composition and dynamics? Who are the parents, the legal guardians, or other adults that might be significant in the child's life and a part of the service plan? Which household members might have a role in the case plan or the service plan, including paramours of the caregiver, and how the individual's interaction with the parent or the legal guardian can be assessed? Having this information about parents and legal guardians is critical. Also, you have to know who has legal custody, who can sign for the consents and the release of information. Understand, too, if there's separation or divorce in the family. Are both parents on board, and do they have a shared parenting agreement? How is the service going to be delivered to both sets of parents? When there is adult involvement in the household, is there domestic violence? Determine how to ensure separate meetings with the other parents or caregivers so that the interviews are not compromised. Thinking more about the family involvement. Having a positive working relationship is critical to the case manager's ability to construct meaningful outcomes, strategies for change with the family and the child, and to assess the progress of the family and the child over time. Building rapport with parents and legal guardians and learning about families through interviews and observations is critical. Obtaining this relevant information and beginning to develop a trust-based work relationship is a cornerstone to the case manager's work. The family assessment is an ongoing process that provides the case manager with information that informs the family as well about the case manager's actions throughout the relationship. The case manager must understand the family dynamics. The case manager must identify the changes in the family dynamics that occur and gather continuous feedback from the family and the others involved in the child's system to know what is working and what is not working to support the child and the family change process. An understanding of the parent legal guardian's internal motivation is critical to change and understanding how to affect change over time. The service plan becomes an evaluation tool, and working with the service plan closely with the parents helps the parents keep track of what they have accomplished. The service plan is a working agreement. It's a mutual understanding between the case manager and the parents or the legal guardians and the child as to how to work effectively together on the family assessment and goals and progress, and how to evaluate progress over time. Discussion should be documented, and it should be agreed upon when and where contacts will occur and how the family can contact the case manager as well as the case manager's supervisor, and how the case manager will contact parents and legal guardians, and what to do if a meeting needs to be changed or modified in some way. The case manager, during an orientation phase of the initial sessions, will explain the activities that the case manager will be doing so that the family understands what is their role and what is the case manager's role. The case manager will learn about the family's understanding and perspectives as to conditions and circumstances that led to their request for case management services. And the case manager will explain what case management work with families usually involves, like figuring out what needs to change for parents in their parenting styles or in their relationships with school systems or legal systems, and developing safe communication strategies when the dynamics of domestic violence poses threats for the child or the family. If one or more of the legal guardians is unwilling to commit to the assessment process, the case manager should try to gain additional information and discuss with the parents the reasons they are unwilling to participate in the process. The case manager can seek to find some areas of mutual agreement, such as meeting their child's needs, which can serve as a point of further discussion or allow for some collaborative planning between the parent, legal guardian, and the case manager. The case manager should never forget to consult their supervisor, and in some cases, invite the supervisor along on a session if that is needed for safety. Case managers who work with children must take the CFARS Rater training and obtain a CFARS Rater ID. The case manager is responsible for assessing the child's functioning, which includes specific indicators of the child's well-being. An assessment of child functioning is the basis for understanding how the parents and the caregivers and the case manager will address any specific child needs. The child's well-being indicators, as identified on the CFARS, is concerned with describing the child's general behavior, emotions, temperament, development, academic status, physical capacity, and health status. It addresses how a child functions from day to day in their current status rather than focusing on specific points in time. The indicator is rater-based information that is provided in a narrative description if the case manager documents it in a progress note. These ratings provide a way for the case manager to identify areas that need attention in the service plan and how to measure over time. The case manager must remember to obtain the parents' or the guardian's authorization to release information or collect information from medical and mental health providers in schools on any other areas in which information is going to be gathered as part of the assessment process. The ultimate purpose is family engagement, to jointly explore with the parents and the legal guardians what their plan is for their child and how to help the child function optimally. The case manager will work with the family and the child to establish goals and objectives that are measurable and stated so that the clients understand what is being addressed and what is being measured. This should happen after the assessment, and the family goals should be established collaboratively with the family members. When that's not possible, the case manager can provide some choices that the family would find acceptable in order to meet the goals that they have identified. Family goals describe what the family hopes to accomplish in order to achieve the best functioning for their child and for their family. It should describe the agreement between the parent or legal guardians and the case manager about what can happen in the child's best interest. These goals and objectives are written in clear, everyday language and are measurable. The case manager should develop the family goal statements using the family words to the extent possible. And after the goals have been established, the case manager will gather information from the parents as possible for strategies to achieving these goals, such as identifying resource networks that might be willing to assist the parents in achieving the family goals, explaining to the parents or legal guardians the next steps that the case manager will take on the family's behalf, and gathering information from the parents and the legal guardians about their ideas on interventions, treatments, and services they're interested in. Also, in the service plan discussion, barriers are addressed. The case manager will then assist the parent, the child, and the legal guardian on how to move forward and attain these goals. Knowledge of the stage of motivation that the parent might be currently experiencing will guide the case manager's efforts throughout the life of the case management service plan to help the parents and the legal guardian move forward through the stages of change. If there's difficulty in engaging the parent or the legal guardian, either the parent or legal guardian is unable or unwilling to engage, the case manager will consult the supervisor. In some cases, the case manager and the parents might disagree about the service plan and what's in the best interest of the child. And it's really the ongoing responsibility of the case manager to exhaust all efforts to move forwards with the family, to continue to actively seek the parent's involvement. The case manager will continue to make diligent efforts to engage the parents or the legal guardians, to overcome barriers and participate in the service plan process. The case manager should continually work towards establishing a partnership by stating the case manager's needs for the parents' involvement, their ideas, and their input. Obtain and review all relevant documentation for family strengths that might be the basis for further exploration when these types of difficulties arise. The supervisor can always assist the case manager with professional input as to engagement approaches, reviews of the use of substance abuse or domestic violence and how that might be contributing to some of the barriers, or if the parent or legal guardian is incarcerated, how to potentially meet with the parent personally if necessary, so that they can have information about their child's current status, strengths, needs, and the relationship the parent has with the child now. As a case manager, it behooves you to have some basic understanding of some stages of development for children through adulthood. Erik Erikson's is an agreed upon model for looking at stages of psychosocial development. Erikson maintained that personality develops in a predetermined order through 8 stages of psychosocial development from infancy to adulthood. During each stage, the person experiences a psychosocial crisis which could give a positive or negative outcome for personality development. For Erikson, these crises are of a psychosocial nature because they involve psychological needs for the individual, conflicting with the needs of the society. According to the theory, successful completion of each stage results in a healthy personality and the acquisition of basic virtues. Basic virtues are characteristic strengths which the ego can use to resolve subsequent crises. Failure to successfully complete a stage can result in a reduced ability to complete further stages and therefore a more unhealthy personality and sense of self. These stages, however, can be resolved successfully at a later time. The chart identifies the 8 stages. Mistrust versus trust. Trust versus mistrust is the first stage in Erik Erikson's theory of psychosocial development. The stage begins at birth and continues to approximately 18 months of age. During this stage, the infant is uncertain about the world in which they live and looks towards their primary caregiver for stability and consistency of care. If the care of the infant is received and is consistent, predictable, and reliable, the infant will develop a sense of trust which will carry them through to other relationships, and they will be able to feel secure even when they're threatened. If these needs are not consistently met, mistrust, suspicion, and anxiety may develop. If the care has been inconsistent or unpredictable or unreliable, then the infant may develop a sense of mistrust or suspicion and anxiety. In this situation, the infant will not have the confidence in the world around them or in their abilities to influence events. Success in this stage of trust versus mistrust will lead to the virtue of hope. By developing a sense of trust, the infant can find hope that as new crises arise, there's a real possibility that other people will be there as a source of support. Failing to acquire the virtue of hope will lead to the development of fear. This infant will carry the basic sense of mistrust with them into other relationships. It may result in anxiety, heightened insecurities, and an overfeeling of mistrust in the world around them. The second stage, autonomy versus shame and doubt. Autonomy versus shame and doubt is the second stage of Erik Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. This stage occurs between the ages of 18 months and approximately 3 years. According to Erikson, children at this stage are focused on developing a sense of personal control over physical skills and a sense of independence. Success in this stage will lead to the virtue of will. If children in this stage are encouraged and supported in their increased independence, they become more confident and secure in their own ability to survive in the world. If children are criticized, overly controlled, or not given the opportunity to assert themselves, they begin to feel inadequate in their abilities. If children are criticized, over-controlled, and not given the opportunity to assert themselves, they may become overly dependent upon others and lack self-esteem and feel a sense of shame or doubt in their abilities. What's happening during this stage? Well, the child is developing physically and becoming more mobile and discovering that he or she has many skills and abilities, such as putting on clothes and shoes, playing with toys, etc. Such skills demonstrate the child's growing sense of independence and autonomy. For example, during this stage, children begin to assert their independence by walking away from their mother and picking which toys they want to play with and making choices about what they like to wear and what they like to eat, etc. What can parents do to encourage a sense of control? Erikson states that it's critical that parents allow their children to explore the limits of their abilities within an encouraging environment which is tolerant of failure. For example, rather than putting a child's clothes on, a supportive parent should have the patience to allow the child to try until they succeed or ask for help. So the parent needs to encourage the child to become more independent while at the same time protecting the child so that the constant failure is avoided. It's a delicate balance that's required from the parent. They must try not to do everything for the child, but if the child fails at a particular task, they must not criticize the child for failures and accidents. The aim has to be self-control without a loss of self-esteem. The third stage, initiative versus guilt. During the initiative versus guilt stage, children assert themselves more frequently. These are particularly lively, rapidly developing years in the child's life. It's a time of vigor, of action, and of behaviors that the parents may see as aggressive. During this period, the primary feature involves the child's regularly interacting with other children at school, and central to this stage is play, as it provides children with the opportunity to explore their interpersonal skills through initiating activities. Children begin to plan activities, make up games, and initiate activities with others. If given this opportunity, children develop a sense of initiative and feel secure in their ability to lead others and make decisions. On the opposite side of the coin, if this tendency is squelched, either through criticism or control, children develop a sense of guilt. Their initiative does not flourish. The child will often overstep the mark of his forcefulness, and the danger is that the parents will tend to push the child and restrict his initiatives too much. It is at this stage that the child will begin to ask many questions as his thirst for knowledge grows. If the parents treat the child's questions as trivial, a nuisance, or embarrassing, or other aspects of their behavior as threatening, then the child may have feelings of guilt for being a nuisance. Too much guilt can make the child slow to interact with others and may inhibit their creativity. Some guilt, of course, is necessary. Otherwise, the child would not know how to exercise self-control or have a conscience. A healthy balance between initiative and guilt is important. Success in this stage will lead to the virtue of purpose, while failure results in a sense of guilt. 4. Industry versus inferiority. Erikson's fourth psychosocial crisis, involving industry, which is competence, versus inferiority, occurs during childhood between the ages of 5 and 12. Children are at the stage where they will be learning to read and write, to do sums, and to do things on their own. Teachers begin to take an important role in the child's life as they teach the child specific skills. It is at this stage that the child's peer group will gain greater significance and will become a major source of the child's self-esteem. The child now feels the need to win approval by demonstrating specific competencies that are valued by society and begin to develop a sense of pride in their accomplishments. If children are encouraged and reinforced for their initiative, they begin to feel industrious, competent, and feel confident in their ability to achieve goals. If this initiative is not encouraged, if it's restricted by parents or teachers, then the child begins to feel inferior, doubting his own abilities and therefore may not reach his or her potential. If the child cannot develop the specific skill they feel society is demanding, such as being athletic, then they may develop a sense of inferiority. Some failure may be necessary so the child can develop some modesty. Again, a balance between competence and modesty is necessary. Success in this stage will lead to the virtue of competence. The fifth stage of Erik Erikson's theory of psychosocial development is identity versus role confusion. This occurs during adolescence from about 12 to 18 years of age. During this stage, adolescents search for a sense of self and personal identity through an intense exploration of personal values, beliefs, and goals. During adolescence, the transition from childhood to adulthood is most important. Children are becoming more independent and begin to look at the future in terms of career, relationships, families, housing, etc. The individual wants to belong to a society and fit in. The adolescent mind is essentially a mind or moratorium, a psychosocial stage between childhood and adulthood, and between the morality learned by the child and the ethics to be developed by the adult. This is a major stage of development where the child has to learn the roles he will occupy as an adult. It is during this stage that the adolescent will re-examine his identity and try to find out exactly who he or she is. Erikson suggests that two identities are involved, the sexual and the occupational. What should happen at the end of this stage is a reintegrated sense of self, of what one wants to do or be, and of one's appropriate sex role. During this stage, the body image of the adolescent changes. Erikson claims that the adolescent may feel uncomfortable about their body for a while until they can adapt and grow into the changes. Success in this stage will lead to the virtue of fidelity. Fidelity involves being able to commit oneself to others on the basis of accepting others, even when there might be ideological differences. During this period, they explore possibilities and begin to form their own identity based upon the outcome of their explorations. Failure to establish a sense of identity within society, such as "I don't know what I want to be when I grow up," can lead to role confusion. Role confusion involves the individual not being sure about themselves or their place in society. In response to role confusion or identity crisis, an adolescent may begin to experiment with different lifestyles. Also, pressuring someone into an identity can result in rebellion in the form of establishing a negative identity, and in addition to this, feelings of unhappiness. Intimacy versus isolation is the sixth stage of Erikson's theory on psychosocial development. This stage takes place during young adulthood between the ages of about 18 to 40 years. During this stage, the major conflict centers on forming intimate, loving relationships with other people. And during this stage, we begin to share ourselves more intimately with others. We explore relationships leading towards long-term commitments with someone other than a family member. Successful completion of this stage can result in happy relationships and a sense of commitment, safety, and care within a relationship. Avoiding intimacy, fearing commitment, and relationships can lead to isolation, loneliness, and sometimes depression. Success in this stage will lead to the virtue of love. Generativity versus stagnation is the seventh of 8 stages of Erikson's theory of psychosocial development. This stage takes place during middle adulthood, about ages 40 to 65. Generativity refers to making your mark on the world through creating and nurturing things that will outlast an individual. People experience a need to create or nurture things that will often outlast them, often having mentees or creating positive changes that will benefit other people. We give back to society through raising our children, being productive at work, and becoming involved in community activities and organizations. Through generativity, we develop a sense of being a part of a bigger picture. Success leads to feelings of usefulness and accomplishment, while failure results in shallow involvement in the world. By failing to find a way to contribute, we become stagnant and feel unproductive. These individuals may feel disconnected or uninvolved with their community and with society as a whole. Success in this stage will lead to the virtue of care. Ego integrity versus despair is the 8th and final stage of Erik Erikson's stage of theory of psychosocial development. This stage begins at approximately age 65 and ends at death. It is during this time that we contemplate our accomplishments and can develop integrity if we see ourselves as leading a successful life. Erikson described ego integrity as the acceptance of one's own and only life cycle and something. Ego integrity versus despair is the 8th and final stage of Erik Erikson's stage theory of psychosocial development. This stage begins at approximately age 65 and ends at death. It is during this time that we contemplate our accomplishments and can develop integrity if we see ourselves as leading a successful life. Erikson described ego integrity as the acceptance of one's one and only life cycle as something that had to be, and later as a sense of coherence and wholeness. As we grow older, 65 plus years, and become senior citizens, we tend to slow down our productivity and explore life as a retired person. Erikson believed that if we see our lives as unproductive, feel guilt about our past, or feel that we did not accomplish our life goals, we become dissatisfied with life and develop despair, often leading to depression and hopelessness. Success in this stage will lead to the virtue of wisdom. Wisdom enables a person to look back at their life with a sense of closure and completeness, and also accept death without fear. Wise people are not characterized by a continuous state of ego integrity, but they experience both ego integrity and despair. Thus, late in life is characterized by both integrity and despair as alternating states that need to be balanced. By extending the notion of personality development across lifespan, Erikson outlines a more realistic perspective of personality development. Based on Erikson's ideas, psychology has reconceptualized the way the later life periods are viewed. Middle and late adulthood are no longer viewed as irrelevant, and because of Erikson, they are now considered active and significant times of personal growth. Erikson's theory has good face validity. Many people find that they can relate to his theories about various stages of the life cycle through their own experiences. However, Erikson is rather vague about the causes of development. What kinds of experiences must people have to successfully resolve various psychosocial conflicts and move from one stage to another? The theory does not have a universal mechanism for crisis resolution. Indeed, Erikson in 1964 acknowledged his theory is more of a descriptive overview of human social and emotional development that does not adequately explain how or why this development occurs. For example, Erikson does not explicitly explain how the outcome of one psychosocial stage influences personality at a later stage. However, Erikson stressed his work was a tool to think with rather than a factual analysis. Its purpose, then, is to provide a framework within which development can be considered rather than a testable theory. One of the strengths of Erikson's theory is its ability to tie together important psychosocial development across the entire lifespan. Given that many of the youth that we see in case management fall in their adolescent years, it bears presentation from the American Academy of Pediatrics on their version of stages of adolescence. Early adolescence is defined as ages 10 to 13, and during this stage, children often start growing more quickly. They also begin to notice other body changes, including hair growth under their arms and near their genitals, breast development in females, and enlargement of the testicles in males. They usually start a year or two earlier in girls than boys, and it can be normal for some changes to start as early as 8 in females and 9 for males. Many girls may start their period at around age 12, on average 2 to 3 years after the onset of breast development. These body changes can inspire curiosity and anxiety in some, and especially if they don't know what to expect or what is normal. Some children may also question their gender identity at this time, and the onset of puberty can be a difficult time for transgender children. Early adolescents have concrete black and white thinking. Things are either right or wrong, great or terrible, and without much room in between. It is normal at this stage for young people to center their thinking on themselves, called egocentrism. As part of this, preteens and early teens are often self-conscious about their appearance and feel as though they're always being judged by peers. Preteens feel an increased need for privacy, and they may start to explore ways to become independent from their family. And in this process, they may push boundaries and may react strongly if parents or guardians reinforce limits. Middle adolescence is about age 14 to 17, and the physical changes from puberty continue during middle adolescence. Most males will have started their growth spurt, and puberty-related changes continue. They may have a voice cracking, for example, as their voice is lower, and some develop acne. Physical changes may be nearly complete for females, and most girls now have regular periods. At this age, many teens become interested in romantic and sexual relationships. They may question and explore their sexual identity, which may be stressful if they do not have the support from peers and family or community. Another typical way of exploring sex and sexuality for teens of all genders is self-stimulation, also called masturbation. Many middle adolescents have more arguments with their parents as they struggle for more independence. They may spend less time with family and more time with friends, and they are very concerned about their appearance, and peer pressure may peak at this age. The brain continues to change and mature at this stage, but there are still many differences in how a normal middle adolescent thinks compared to an adult. Much of this is because the frontal lobes are the last area of the brain to mature. Development is not complete until a person is well into their 20s. The frontal lobes play a big role in coordinating complex decision-making, impulse control, and being able to consider multiple options and consequences. Middle adolescents are more able to think abstractly and consider a big picture, but they still may lack the ability to apply it at any moment. For example, in certain situations, kids in middle adolescence may find themselves thinking things like, "I'm doing well enough in math and I really want to see this movie. One night of skipping studying won't matter." Or they might think, "Do I really have to wear a condom during sex if my girlfriend takes the pill? Marijuana is now legal, so it can't be that bad." While they may be able to walk through the logic of avoiding risk outside of these situations, strong emotions often continue to drive their decisions when impulse come into play. Late adolescence generally has completed physical development and grown to their full adult height. They usually have more impulse control by now, because these are ages 18 to 21, and they may be better able to gauge risk and rewards accurately. In comparison to the middle adolescent, youth in late adolescence might find themselves thinking, "Why do I love Paul Rudd in movies? I need to study for my final. I should wear a condom, even though my girlfriend is on birth control, and that's not 100% in preventing pregnancy." And they might think, "Even though marijuana is legal, I'm worried about how it will affect my mood and work and school performance." Teens entering early adulthood have a stronger sense of their own individuality now and can identify their own values. They may become more focused on the future and base decisions on their hopes and ideals. Friendships and romantic relationships become more stable. They become more emotionally and physically separated from their family. However, many will reestablish an adult relationship with their parents, considering them more an equal from whom to ask advice and discuss mature topics with, rather than as an authority figure. Children and their parents often struggle with changing dynamics of family relationships during adolescence, but parents are still a critical support through this time. Parents can help their child anticipate changes in his or her body, learn about puberty, and parents can explain what's ahead. Parents can reassure the child of the physical changes in their emerging sexuality is part of a normal, healthy development, and leave room for questions to allow the child to ask questions at their own pace. A referral to a pediatrician may be necessary if the parents feel overwhelmed. Parents can start early conversations about other important topics and maintain open communication about healthy relationships, sex, sexuality, consent, and safety, such as how to prevent sexually transmitted infections in pregnancy and substance use. Starting these conversations during early adolescence will help build a good framework for discussion later. Parents can keep their conversations with their child positive, point out strengths, and celebrate successes. Parents can be supportive and set clear limits with high but reasonable expectations. Communication is clear, reasonable expectations for curfews are made, school engagement, media use, and behavior. At the same time, parents can gradually expand opportunities for more independence over time as the child takes on more responsibility. Youth with parents that aim for this balance have been shown to have a lower rate of depression and drug use. Parents can discuss risky behaviors such as sexual activity and substance abuse and the consequences. Case managers can provide parents with this information if parents don't know where to get it. Be sure to set a positive example yourself as a case manager and a model for the parents and for the child. Parents can help their teens consider or rehearse decision-making ahead of time and prepare when the situations arise. Honor independence and individuality. This is all part of moving into early adulthood. Always remind the child and the parents that you are there to help when needed. The adolescent years can feel like riding a roller coaster. By maintaining positive and respectful parent-child relationships and case manager-family relationships during this period, the family can learn to enjoy the ride. Thank you for completing Domain 1.5, Assessing Children and Families for Case Management Services. Take the test and remember, a passing grade of 70% is required.